Hello and welcome to another edition of the Father and Son Pastime Podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kevin.
That's my dad.
How are you?
We are finished, Dad, with our top 30 overall dream teams, and we're going to have a little fun with it now for our audience at home. We're going to pick our overall best dream team, our best franchises, if you will, that, according to our picks, again, watching our old videos, that kind of thing, that we think are our best choices, our best lineups. That the overall team that is going to be number one on that list can beat all the other 29 teams. They're the top dog. They're the dream of dream teams, the king of kings. So we have a top five. We're going to kind of debate that list. Some people, do top fives with their top five fast food restaurants. We're going to do that, but in this list of our 30 MLB dream teams. We're going to work our way up from the bottom. So we're going to start with the fifth one, and then maybe have some disagreements, all that stuff, and then we'll get to that number one overall pick. So, Dad, for my fifth choice here is the Chicago Cubs. Now, the Chicago Cubs have a litany of Hall of Famers on my dream team. If we go back to that podcast, I'm thankful for yours as well. Mm-hmm. They don't have as many rings. There's plenty of other teams that have 3 as well, or they have even more than that aren't going to appear on my list. But again, the players are who you're facing in this dream team scenario. You're not facing their history of championships. So I think the best players, Chicago Cubs, definitely deserve to be on this top 5 list.
I have the St. Louis Cardinals, or arch rival.
As fifth?
Yes.
Okay. And why the Cardinals at 5 versus maybe higher on the list?
Well, they have outstanding players in key spots. Mm-hmm. They have key, probably one of the all-time great pitchers, probably one of the greatest all-time hitters, but in each of the positions, there's not a bona fide star in there. So if you look at St. Louis and their longevity, they do have some great people at the very top of the pinnacle, but then some average players within their roster. So for me, St. Louis fits the number 5.
Well, I'm excited to talk about the St. Louis Cardinals later in my top 5 list, but I definitely give them a lot more credit than perhaps my co-anchor here with my dad. Dad, so who's your fourth choice? And you sent it back to me.
The Boston Red Sox.
All right, we're agreeing right there. That's good. We're both on the fourth base. Why 4 for Boston?
Well, you're talking about a storied franchise. And then you look at the stars that they've had over the years. If you really look at their position players, exceedingly strong, including probably the best DH of all time. Mm-hmm. But the only weak spot they may have is pitching. And if you look at starting pitching and bullpen, maybe not as good as the others. So that's the reason why they fell down to 4, in my opinion. But at the same time, I just love Boston and what they've stood for. And really, offensively, they're definitely in the top 3. But pitching brought them down to 4.
Okay, very fair. Again, I think you got to put Boston in this top 5. I think it goes without saying that all of our top 5 teams are going to have a very long, illustrious history. 100+ years. Mm-hmm. If you're one of those newer teams like the Rockies or the Rays, you might have had some great seasons or World Series runs, but you don't have the depth and the history that these teams are fortunate enough to have. So I also agree with Boston. I think, obviously, you have Pedro as your starting pitcher for the Red Sox, and Pedro, in my opinion, is one of the best pitchers of all time, if not the best of my generation that I've been able to watch play. But I think I give maybe pitching a little bit more credit. I think maybe their bullpen would be a little weaker. That's certainly a fair observation. Mm-hmm. Boston's always had trouble with bullpen over the years outside of Eck. But yeah, so again, 4th overall pick, 9 total championships there. Definitely worthy of being on the Rushmore, so to speak, of MLB dream teams.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, definitely the founding fathers. And, about, how great they were. And, the other thing you look at, they got a great team, but they also have a great stadium. Okay. And if you really look about what baseball is, and it's the home of the team, people go to Fenway just to see Fenway.
Yeah, it would be my overall ballpark, but we're not doing ballparks, we're doing dream teams. Moving on to 3rd on my list, it's the Cincinnati Reds.
Same here.
Very nice. So we'll talk more about the Cardinals, Cubs in a little bit.
Yeah.
But the Cincinnati Reds sometimes, kind of go up against the Cardinals maybe, or maybe sometimes go up against the Cubs that we were talking about, best overall National League team. I love their history. I think you obviously have a super strong catcher. You're going to have an all-time hits leader with Pete Rose. Mm-hmm. For my dream team, you're going to have Ken Griffey in center. Maybe you might differ at home, but I'm always a little bit lenient, biased towards Ken Griffey. And again, you
can't tell.
Yeah, you have great pitching with Seaver, John Franco, and Aroldis Chapman for me on that sort of dream team in the bullpen. So just that big red machine comes out to me, and with 5 total championships, especially in that era. extremely strong team. Hard to find a hole to get a hit in that offense. It's hard to get a hit off of some of those pitchers.
Yeah, when they had the big red machine, people thought it was so unfair. They had 1 through 8 solid offensive players, and they would just outscore you.
Yeah.
So the pitching probably didn't get enough publicity that it probably should have got over those years. But at the same time, their hitting was probably averaging 8, runs a game, whatever, and there wasn't any holes to pitch around. So right from the leadoff hitter being Rose, and he set the table with Joe Morgan, and then got Antonio Perez. They just kept on going, and it was a fun team to watch. And they dominated for a decade.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why they're at number 3 in my opinion. Just because when they were dominant, they were dominant.
Agreed. So who's your second pick?
The LA Dodgers.
Okay, so Los Angeles didn't make my list at all, so the Cubs didn't make your list at all, I'm assuming, unless one's surprisingly different from a very obvious choice in my opinion. So why the Dodgers? So that means you're saying the Dodgers are the best National League team ever.
Yes.
Better than the Cardinals, better than the Cubs, better than the Reds.
Yes.
All right, people at home, let's hear it. Let's hear it. Why do you say the Dodgers?
I think because of the brand of baseball they had. And they had great managerial with Walter Alston and Lasorda. He really played baseball with great defense, great speed. They had dominant pitching for the longest time. There's arguably during the Drysdale Koufax era the best 1-2 pitchers in the game for 10 years before Sandy Koufax retired. And they always had stars when they had, they were great during the 70s and 80s with Ron Say and Davey Lopes and Steve Garvey, Steve Yeager behind the plate, Reggie Smith in the outfield. They had dominant all-star teams with that era, and now they're back and they're doing the same thing. And if you really think about who's on the pitching staff now and future Hall of Famers, I'm thinking the legacy of the Dodgers and the LA Dodgers, and you want to throw in the Brooklyn Dodgers into the mix, you're thinking they have more all-stars and stars than most franchises have.
It's a compelling argument. I appreciate you doing it. So what you said about the Cardinals is how I feel about the Dodgers. So maybe just a difference of maybe memory or thinking about our dream teams. But the Cardinals are littered with Hall of Famers. Again, we're going to go way back to early 1900s with people like Hornsby and that kind of thing. For my Dodgers dream team, I only had 2 Hall of Famers on their entire lineup. One is being Mike Piazza, and the other being Sandy Koufax. So in that Dodgers versus Cardinals all-time great, which was definitely a game I would want to see, you could see Koufax go against Bob Gibson.
Nobody scores.
I think it's a 1-0 game. I definitely agree with that. But I think the Cardinals have the better offense given that situation. You're going to have... So my pick is the Cardinals for number 2. So you're going to have Stan the Man. You're going to have Lou Brock. You're going to have Hornsby, who hit .424 one year. You're going to have Pujols. You're going to have Yachty behind the plate, Ozzie Smith, Ken Boyer, Jim Edmonds. That lineup is more offensively dominant than Piazza, Justin Turner, Gary Sheffield, Matt Kemp, Raul Mondesi, or other people you might put in right field. I'm just going off my dream team here. I just think the Cardinals with 11 World Series wins, second most all time, gets them second most on my list.
When the Dodgers were good and you left a lot of the 70s Dodgers off your list.
Right, and again, it's bias.
Correct. I mean, they had just phenomenal ability. Rick Monday was a Dodger. You had Reggie Smith. You had Dusty Baker.
Mm-hmm.
You had Ron Say, Bill Russell, Davey Lopes, Steve Garvey as an infield.
Mm-hmm.
That was the all-star infield.
Yeah.
So, and then you go back to the 60s when Maury Wills was part of that. And then they had Roseboro behind the plate.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the outfield, they had great players. They always had star potential. And I think they always did it the right way. And they always seemed to be in the top 2 of their division.
Yeah.
Just steady franchise. And always had winning records.
More debate here than I thought there would be on the top 5. I thought we'd debate more at the bottom of the list, to be honest. But let's go to the clear victor, the 27-ring New York Yankees. That's the all-time dream team. If you think of, there's so many retired numbers on that team. I mean, you say best 25-man roster, best 40-man roster.
Just go to center field.
Yeah, it's always going to be the Yankees. You can talk about whatever. Yankees are able to always afford the best players to whatever, but they've grown players too.
Yeah, that wasn't in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's when they... And then you think of the 20s.
Yep.
Thinking when it was Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth and those great players, money wasn't an issue.
Yeah.
So, it was before free agency. They just went out and got players.
Yep.
They recruited Mickey Mantle out of Oklahoma when he was playing in farm fields.
Yeah.
They just had a organization that knew how to get players, and they got some great players and continued the pipeline. They had a little dry spell in the '70s, but then Steinbrenner brought him back around. But there wasn't how many dry spells through the existence of the Yankees.
Agreed.
Think about that for a minute.
I think what's always interesting, you're going to run out of jerseys eventually for the Yankees with so many people that are retired. You can't get that 1 through 9 anymore. Like,
That's
they're
right.
all retired now. There's not a single team out there that has retired their 1 through 9 jersey numbers. Some, maybe multiple, that kind of thing, but no one's done that 1 through 9, that classic baseball lineup retired numbers. The Yankees have. The Yankees have the most Hall of Famers. They have the best dream teams here. If I had to bet who's the best dream team, New York Yankees.
Yeah, I remember when we did the discussion, you're like,
on Father's Day.
Yeah, and then who do we leave off?
Just Hall of Famers. Hall of Famers got left off.
I remember going down the list, and I'm like, picking between Mantle and DiMaggio.
Yep.
How do you do that?
Exactly.
And then it's just personal favorites. It's not any rhyme or reason, but the Yankees, at all the positions, had Hall of Famer, with the exception of third base, I believe.
That's correct, because I went with Craig Nettles.
Yeah, and he was a great player.
Yeah.
And was a huge part of their success in the '70s and '80s.
Yeah.
So, hats off to the Yankees for doing baseball correctly. Steinbrenner did get his fair share of criticism, but he won.
Yeah, he absolutely did.
Yeah.
So we had some debates there. So we agree with the Yankees, we agree with the Red Sox in terms of placement.
Mm-hmm.
Cardinals deserve to be on the list, although we're debating what spot. So sound off at home if you think 2 makes a little bit more sense than 5. And then, Cubs or Dodgers should be on that list. I have them barely making it 5. You have the Dodgers pretty high on your list, obviously.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Dodgers would be like an honorable mention for me, as well as the Athletics and Pirates. Sometimes people forget how good those teams were in the '70s.
We're going to have to reevaluate your dream team from the
No.
Dodgers.
I'll show you my dream team.
I know that,
over it.
but didn't have Reggie Smith in there. You didn't have Ryan.
I like Raul Mondesi. I would have chosen Sean Green before Reggie Smith, too.
Sean Green's a hell of a player, too.
I know.
Yeah. So
the point is, the Yankees, you debate which Hall of Famer, and the Dodgers, you debate maybe which All-Star.
Yeah.
And I think...
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point.
So, again, it's just night and day that the Yankees are the best franchise in baseball history. I think everyone knew that watching this. But where is that 2 through 5 list? And I think that's where the debate falls in.
Yeah. Let's say there's a lot of great players in baseball. It's hard to do, but it's fun to do.
Yeah, it's really fun. Challenge yourself at home. Let us know where your 5 are. Again, Dodgers, Athletics, Pirates. Honestly, the Orioles should be in your top 10. The overall best Oriole players are quite talented. A lot of Hall of Famers. Brooks, Cal, Palmer, Eddie Murray.
And I'm an anti-homer, and I just look at what makes me angry about the franchise is the owner, the current owner, Angelos, how he kind of like broke up the team and never reinvested into the team, and he let a lot of really good players go that could have sustained that great winning record and playoffs and all that stuff, and he chose to market the stadium and not the team.
Mm.
That turned out to be a big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I will live with that, and that gets into my decision making.
Sure. Bias as well from where you grew up and what teams you saw. He grew up in Chicago, so I'm very surprised he didn't choose the Cubs. The White Sox have a fight in this, so not so much as the Cubs, in my opinion, but surprised with the Dodgers, honestly. Very surprised with your choice of the Dodgers. We're in Maryland now, so there's obviously the East Coast bias. Philadelphia is certainly up there, but we went with the teams we went with.
I think the 5 and then the 6, if you throw that, are, arguably, the main ones, and they all have great storied history. Yep. I don't think you can go wrong with any of those. It's just the pecking order.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big part of it.
Agree. Let us know your thoughts below in the comments, and thanks for watching.
Thank you.